Some of the most important aspects of mixing is to get your EQ correctly, and that's what we did in the previous video. We made sure that every single track that we worked on was EQ'd correctly so that the frequencies were not clashing. In today's video, another important aspect of mixing, which is reverb, will be dealt today. Reverb gives you dimension, it gives you that sense of depth in your mix, and is one of the most crucial things that you need to add in any song. Without reverb, your song is going to sound really dry and it's not going to give meaning at all. So we're going to add reverb on every single track and make sure that the track comes alive. So if you're new here, I'm Florina Jane, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of music production related videos. So if that's something that you like, then don't forget to subscribe. So let's get into the video. This is the track we have, and I've applied EQ on almost all the tracks. Now we're going to focus on reverb. But my approach to using reverb is going to be a little different than how I've done in earlier videos. I am going to create a reverb on one bus track, and I'm going to use that reverb for all my tracks. Instead of assigning different reverbs with different decays for each instrument or for each group of instruments, I just want to put one reverb that kind of fills or kind of feels like the environment is same for every single instrument. Let's start with the piano, and I'm going to assign bus 12 as my reverb track. So I'm going to experiment with this reverb a little bit, and then we're going to decide how much to send and all this stuff. So the amount of send I'm doing right now is not what I'll be using in the end. Do you hear that sustain? So I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb, and the decay is set around 4 seconds. I've also removed all of these EQ changes that they've inbuilt on the reverb plugin. Like for example, they put high shelf at 6000, which I don't need right now. They have a high cut. All those things I don't need. But what I am going to do is put another channel EQ and just going to cut around 40 or probably 45 hertz or something like that, just to eliminate those lows that you get because of the reverb. And probably I'm going to use this as my reverb for all my tracks. Also, I'm going to check if the plugin that I'm using has inbuilt reverb, because sometimes that will also have. For example, if you look at Keyscape, there are reverb settings over here which I've actually used. Some VSTs will have inbuilt reverb to it, similar to how I said in the previous videos that some VSTs will have panning to it. So if you have reverb already inside your VST, see if this external reverb also is giving you a good kind of quality. If it doesn't give you that quality, you don't even have to use that reverb in that area. I'm going to use this reverb, and if there is some issue with this reverb, maybe in that case we can replace it with something else. But now we're going to use this, and I'm going to assign reverb to all the tracks. So here are some pointers to remember. If you want a track to sound closer to you, you need to have very less reverb. Because if someone's closer to you, you're not going to hear a lot of reverb from what they speak, right? Reverb needs like distance to travel. So if the dry signal is very close to you, you're not going to hear any reverb. That's the kind of criteria we're going to use. If I have melodies, then I will need my melodies to be like closer to me up front. So I'll probably put less reverb. But if there are backing tracks, like let's say my cello is doing some kind of chord progression and I want that at the back, I'll put more reverb. In addition, if you want to give that distance perspective, you can even bring down the volume a bit, and so that distance will become apparent. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I have turned off this reverb and still you hear all those reverb, and that's because Keyscape has an inbuilt reverb. So at this point, I don't even think I need any of these reverb right now. So I'm not going to use this at all because it's in its way sounding good. Don't you notice that reverb on the violin so clearly, because this doesn't have reverb in it, and that's why it's only dry signal. So with this, it's sounding much more natural. Okay, when we come to percussion, the thing is you need to add reverb, but remember percussions are usually in the mids and in lows. So when you try to put too much of reverb, it is not going to give you a pleasant sound. You're going to hear a lot of rumbleness, a lot of resonance, and you don't want that on your tracks. So if you want to add reverb, you add the tiniest of reverbs. And sometimes it's good to even choose a different plugin reverb with less decay so that it's not sustaining. Especially if the mids are sustaining, it's gonna go and interfere with everything. So I'm gonna see if this reverb is still sounding good or if we have to change it. Okay, I'm going to continue the same structure for the brass cello, wind instruments, and all these other tracks, and I'll show you what I've done in the end. So I have finished adding reverb on all the tracks. So if you see, when I open all these groups, mostly that bus number 12, that reverb that we added is running on all these things. In some cases, I've also combined two reverbs. Like for example, if you look at this track, which is the cymbal swell, these were reverbs that I added while programming. So some came in as presets, some I tweaked that a little bit, and I decided to keep them also as I added this as well. So that I kind of liked how it was sounding, so I just kept it that way. And similarly, like for example, if you listen to this ear candy part, okay, now I'll turn off all the reverbs on the glockenspiel. Now listen to the same section. So you heard that reverb kind of expanding its range, and it sounded much more better with it, right? So that's the idea of using reverb. And also in this chimes, kind of travels, and the way it is traveling like that, if you notice, it's moving from left to right and right to left. It's because of this tremolo plugin. So this is a stock plugin, and I chose a preset called slow panning, because if not, then this will sound like. I mean, it's okay, but what's the fun in that? With this, it's traveling. So in context with the song, that's the context. So it sounds more like it has more life to it. So now this is what we got with the reverb. So one more thing, there's a lot of automations that are also going on in several places. Like if you look at the violins, I've changed the MIDI volume and I've automated all that so that it's not sounding in a stagnant way, in a monotonous way. So in that way, I've changed a lot of stuff. Even I think on piano, some of the note velocities were changed, and once again on French horns, yes, if you look at modulation, I changed it a little bit so that it had more life to it. So this is how you can bring in that effect. And if you look at the beginning, now listen to it without these things. See that long reverb? I wanted extra reverb on this specifically because there's just two tracks going on. One melody and one chord progression, and there's nothing else. So I need the room to fill. So that's the reason why this is happening. And if you look at the ending part, you will notice that the whole instrument will kind of rise up. So that again is because of modulation. If you look at this one and MIDI velocity, you notice this happening. It goes up that way. That is because of modulation that you get that kind of rise and fall and all that. And a couple of changes on the note velocity as well. So I can give more modulation also, so that just, I'm doing it instinctively. So when I'm doing some other plugin and I notice, oh, I need this kind of to rise up or come down, I'm doing that. So I'm not consciously doing it as a modulation step. I'm just doing it then and there instinctively. But this is how you can get depth and add another dimension to your mix. With just these two itself, your track is sounding on a whole other level, right? We're getting beautiful frequencies out of the song, and also we're getting a lot of distances and a lot of perspective with regards to the mix. So after this, we are yet to do a little bit of fine tuning to the mix, and then we have to master it so that it's suitable for any streaming service. So we'll do all that in the next video. So if you found this useful, don't forget to put comment and I'll definitely read your comments. If you want me to make some other videos, tell me in the comments and I'll definitely make a video as well. I hope this video was useful. Thank you so much for watching. Keep making music and I'll see you guys in another video.